Welcome back to another episode of Viewer Discretion. This week, my co-host David Dennis Jr. and I are going to break down another movie before returning to television. Talk about that later. We are here to discuss Materialists, not The Materialists. Justin Timberlake voice, just Materialists. We are also going to talk about the current state of romantic comedies, our all-time favorite romantic comedies. But David, we should probably start off by discussing the fact that this movie is not actually a romantic comedy.
Yeah, so this was Mina's suggestion, and Mina has built this thing up as we're going to watch romantic comedy. I was not familiar with like any of the parts of this, director, past, anything. So I was going into this expecting romantic comedy, and then about like halfway through, I was like, "There's not much comedy. There's not much romance." I'm not sure like where we are with it.
You in America were taken by surprise because so we're going to get into the film, what we like, what we did, and we're going to do grades, all of that. We're going to talk about Celine Song and Past Lives, which David watched and loved. But the thing I want to start off by talking about is the fact that the trailers for this movie, which you saw later
after the movie,
advertised it as a very the first trailer that came out was a very like almost 90s-esque, purposefully outdated feel. And the movie has like these three incredibly attractive, hot actors. Hot as in like their careers are hot. Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, Pedro Pascal, they're also hot. And then this trailer comes out. It's like one woman deciding between two men. And it's a classic romantic comedy trope.
And the interview trope. You got it. Like it starts with the interview trope that goes when Harry Met Sally. Like they're interviewing people. Like it's like, to your point, so romantic comedy.
Throwback.
Yeah.
So, when I saw that, I thought this was a romantic comedy, but I also expected it to be somewhat off kilter because it's Celine Song, whose last movie was like incredibly sad artistic love story. Yeah. It's also an A24 film, which is an artier, film house. So I didn't think it was going to be like the cliche romantic comedy is advertised, but I still thought it was going to be a romantic comedy. And the funny thing is, David, like on its face, this movie actually had like all of the elements of a romantic comedy, the leads, the look and the feel of the film, especially in the first half, the settings and the romance, like it's New York and they're in restaurants and there's gorgeous apartments. And then ultimately, like if you just wrote down the basic plot points of the film without watching it, and you were like, this matchmaker is choosing between a rich guy and her, past love who's poor, and then she ends up with the past love, and she, completely comes to terms with like maybe she doesn't need money. You would think this is a romantic comedy, but of course it is not at all comedic.
At all.
It's not. It's a very cold movie.
Well, the first 30 minutes, I think we could agree. I mean, we're going to talk about what worked. I think we could agree the first 30 minutes were like, I thought they were great. I was like into it. And the other romantic comedy part of it is the job. I think like there's always this background of like absurdity in a romantic comedy. When you think about like and a lot of it is the job, like where you work for a living. I think about Hitch and what he, like he's crazy job. And so she's like, how many weddings did you have? And there's like all these like sort of blonde women who kind of like shuffle behind her. And it's kind of absurd. And you get this feeling like we're getting the workplace, we're getting the characters, we're getting a turn that's going to be romantic comedy, and we don't. And instead, we get a whole sexual assault subplot, which did not see that coming. And I was like, this is so far away from a romantic comedy. And after having seen the trailer afterwards, you feel kind of betrayed because they got like the Pantene Pro V soundtrack in the background, all this stuff. And there's no hint that there's this really dark story in the background of this movie.
I mentioned to this to you, but the movie It Ends With Us with Blake Lively got a lot of backlash for. It's a movie about domestic violence. It's based on a very popular book by Colleen Hoover about domestic violence, but that was criticized for some of the advertising being like about a romance, not a romantic comedy. But I haven't seen that sort of backlash to this, but I suspect most people who went into the theater had a sense of this not being like a straight romantic comedy per se, but it is jarring when you juxtapose it with the way it was presented. And we might as well just jump into, what we liked and didn't like about this film. It's a very complicated film. I've gone back and forth on my feelings about it, honestly, like while watching it. And since then, you hit on the first thing that I said I liked, which is I thought the first half of the movie it was more of what I expected, which was taking a traditional romantic comedy and subverting it, right?
Yes.
Because the first half of the film establishes the main three characters. Dakota Johnson plays the matchmaker. We get these like funny workplace shot. Those were actually kind of funny. That was like the funniest stuff. Was we show her in these interviews with potential candidates or people who want to be matched, men and women. The montages really highlight how dark the dating scene is, how, and this is obviously the kind of the main theme of the movie, how much it has become commodified, how all these men and women are just like, you know, has to be like, you know, 6 feet, this age, this BMI, he has to make this amount of money. And Dakota Johnson herself talks about these things, both in the context of her clients and herself, in a way that's like almost shockingly blunt, which is not something you see every day. And she meets Pedro Pascal's character at a wedding. She is very, again, blunt with him. I want to be with a guy who makes a lot of money. He kind of gives it back to her. He's not taken back about it at all. We introduced the Chris Evans character, who is like her former boyfriend, who is a poor guy. He's a cater waiter, a struggling actor. All of this worked for me. I wasn't sure where I was going. I wasn't sure how I was going to end up. And I think that was kind of an interesting, like, I had no idea how this movie would land the plane. But the first half of the movie, and particularly the stuff that I've described, I actually just kind of found compelling. And it was like nothing I've seen before.
Yeah, I thought it was compelling at the beginning, especially to me. What caught my attention, like you kind of gleaned onto the sort of like commodified nature of it. I was like thinking about the money, like as a millennial, especially now you have all these reports about like fewer children and how much it costs to have kids and all this stuff in the real world. So you have this moment of a flashback where Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson are arguing, and it's basically about like, we're poor and I hate it. You know, I just hate not having money. And she is very, as you mentioned, very blunt about the fact that I want to date somebody with money, which is like a thing that, you know, as a millennial, you kind of think about, you know what I'm saying? Like male or female, you just think about the fact that I just want to be out of whatever this financial strain is, whether it's like being single in New York or student loans or whatever. And those moments really stood out to me. Like the dinner that she has with Pedro, like they're having their meals and she's just like, look, I just want money. What you got for money? And he was like, cool. And then like, to me, the screeching halt, we both talked about the first half, but to me, the screeching halt was the moment she got into his apartment. Like that was sort of when it's kind of stopped for me.
Go on.
I don't know. And maybe this is like me, but like, I feel like if you are an attractive woman or an attractive woman in New York, looks like Dakota Johnson, you can like end up in a rich dude's apartment. You know what I'm saying? Like you could like find yourself in a rich dude's
apartment. It was too much.
It was too much of her just being like, oh my God, like look at the walls.
Pretty
look at the, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you've been like,
pretty nice apartment, but
it was a pretty nice apartment. You could end up in a rich dude's apartment. If that was like your sole goal out of this whole thing. And so from there, a lot of the plot just kind of, you know, gets muddled, and we're going to talk about that. But I think like the conversation about the money and where she was with that and the arguing and all that stuff. And as a millennial, I thought that's where we were going in conjunction with the commodified idea of love and stuff.
I think, the movie is, we're going to talk about kind of the bigger themes later, but I thought the first half really nailed this theme of being this age, living in this moment, having money be either a stressor on a relationship as it was in her past one, or something that is incredibly enticing, pardon me, as she very bluntly says. I also I enjoyed the first half because of that, and I think she was the right actress for that part of the movie. We'll talk about her later. But I also liked the uncertainty of it all, because the thing about romantic comedies that makes a lot of them bad is they're incredibly predictable formulaic wise. The really great ones either defy predictability in certain ways, or they're so good it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, usually when you're watching a romantic comedy, you know who the woman is going to end up with from the jump.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's nice. It's like comfort food. Sometimes it's like, all right, you know, this is dumb. Like, what are we doing? We're going to go through an hour and a half to get to this. We all know how it's going to play out, whatever. I actually really loved in the first half of the movie, you had no freaking clue.
Yeah.
And I felt that way. Did you feel that way watching it? We were like, I don't know how this is going to play out.
Yeah. And also, and having seen past lives afterwards, it also subverted the romantic comedy of her getting back with the guy, with the guy,
Yes.
and the husband already clocking that he is the tropey like obstacle in a romantic comedy, and then it ending in a sort of different way. And so you look at this, and her bluntness over money. I didn't think that we were going to get this thing where she's like, money doesn't matter and like love does matter. Like I didn't think we were going to go there. And so I thought we were just going to get to something that was more, unpredictable, unconventional, and really spoke at the heart of something. Like it was exciting to think about that after the first 30 minutes. Like, where are we going?
The scenes with her and Pedro Pascal were interesting also, and I thought really well played because they didn't not have sexual chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have overwhelming sexual chemistry, but there's like the montage. There's the scene where they meet at the wedding, which I really liked. I thought that was really interesting because I was like, whoa, this woman is being very blunt about money, and I loved how unrattled he was by it. I thought that was shocking, kind of. And then when they went on dates, this dynamic continues, and there's the scene where the final scene after like they go on many dates and they're in some fancy restaurant, and she tells him, "You can do better than me. The market suggests here are the reasons why," and he explains to her that he wants to be with someone who is worldly and understands him, and he thinks that she has mispriced her value. I thought that was a really good scene because, again, the movie also, and this is another, I think, cool choice, it never makes you dislike Pedro Pascal. Like there's a little bit of an enigma, but you're watching this scene play out, and while yes, it's not terribly romantic, it is kind of exciting and interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This had me the first half of the movie. I really liked it. The other thing I liked, I thought Pedro. I thought it was a really interesting performance.
Yeah, I thought he was great. I thought he was really good. Yeah. I thought he was really good. I thought him and Chris Evans were pretty good. He was a good dude, and I liked the way he was unfazed about her. It was almost like he could see through who she was and what to it. Because like as a guy like him, who's he's rich and all this stuff, and so I'm sure he comes across women who just want him for money. But he played a guy who saw something better and deeper in her, and wanted to and kind of was able to like push past this thing about money because it felt like he saw something else. He was great throughout, and I don't know if we want to talk about his last scene in the movie.
Yeah, I want to talk about it because I thought this scene was excellent. I thought he was excellent in it. To be clear. The image of him shrinking down to pretend to be 5'6", and then the camera panning away from the counter, I thought was like such a great scene. Again, we're watching this. We're wondering when the other shoe is going to drop with this dude. Are we ever going to find out anything bad about him that would justify her not choosing this like handsome, rich, perfect on paper unicorn of a man?
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a foreshadowing, and in the matchmaker office. Her and I think it's the Dasha from Red Scare is playing it's a small role as another matchmaker. They talk about how men get these. Oh no, it's I think the woman who runs the business talk about how men get these leg lengthening surgeries that cost $100,000 to make themselves taller. I didn't think of any of it.
No.
Flash forward, they're in bed. She notices a scar on his leg. I didn't remember this. Then flash forward again the night before they're supposed to go on their big trip to Iceland. This is after the sexual assault of her other client. We're going to talk about that in more detail. She notices the scars again. She touches it. He gets up, goes to the kitchen. It's actually shot almost like a horror movie. It's like very like, what is going on? What is chilling here? And she clocks it immediately. He's asked her, do you know what that is? She says, yes. The other shoe finally drops. He reveals that he got the surgery. Again, I liked this scene because it didn't play out as him like, oh, you lied to me. She's like, yeah, I've also invested in myself. She points to her nose, and I
Here's the thing about this movie. Here's the thing I would say I think I loved and did not like. I love that this movie used numbers. I love that she told you exactly how much she makes. And that was a really cool, another subversive thing that we have these like people in New York, like Sex and the City, of course, famously, like Carrie Bradshaw writes one column a week or a month, and she's like got Manolos or whatever every
friends
week.
They live in a ridiculous apartment.
Yeah, but she says exactly how much she makes, $80,000, and I'm like, you making $80,000, and you gave her do that?
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah. Well, she doesn't look like she has a nose job, by the way. One thing I like about her face is that she's kind of a quirky nose. But anyways, it actually ends up being the catalyst to their breakup But I thought this was played interestingly. It's not because he had the surgery. She actually respects the investment. It's that she says, this, I don't feel anything about this. And I don't feel anything about you. I'm not in love with you. But again, I just thought he was so excellent in that scene, the way he handled it. It was like the perfect blend of like slightly embarrassed, but also, and then when he shrunk down, that's going to be in my mind. It was a great performance. Chris Evans, I thought, was good. Okay, sorry. You have,
I want to talk about this scene because that I was thinking about you a lot in this scene because I was like, what quarterback in the history of the NFL has done the most with a bad offensive line? Because for him to sell this like kind of ridiculous plot point of this movie and make this scene so good, it was like Cam Newton at Auburn. Like to me, to see this dude carry this scene, that it was because it was
high level difficulty of acting.
Yes,
for sure.
high level difficulty with
like the emotional reveal is that this man had leg lengthening surgery,
yes.
and yet it doesn't make you think less of him. Weirdly, like
it's
I don't know.
It's especially in a scene that felt sudden. It was a sudden breakup. Like it was a sudden breakup. It was and then like we're talking about something that's kind of ridiculous to like, like it's introduced in the movie as ridiculous. Like, some guys get this, like, and then he's like, I was 5'6", like it's something that's a hard sell. And for him to pull it off and sell this kind of ridiculous scene and sell this sort of like moment that didn't feel like it was earned. And for us to have this thing where you're like, I'm going to remember this forever. That's like, that is just like scrambling out the pocket, throwing the ball opposite side of the field for 50 yards and scored a touchdown from Pedro Pascal.
I thought you were going to compare him to Russell Wilson because of the height thing or something. Which, by the way, that scene affected me so much. I texted the group chat and I said, we got to stop height shaming because it's actually really messed up. I'm serious. I was like, damn, like, like this is like a big thing for men. I mean, it comes up a lot in the movie. Women are like, is he really 6 feet over and over and over? And like, I think because I cover football, sometimes I get a little too comfortable talking about as it pertains to an athletic thing. But like, it is kind of like messed up. I don't know, the amount of importance that society places on this. And so in her montages, she shows it going both ways. Right. She shows the way men and women commodify each other and set these unrealistic standards.
And they mentioned like how much better your life, like adding 6 inches to your, to your height changes your body, like changes your potential earnings by XYZ amount of dollars and all this stuff. And they really handled something that felt like if you write it out and say, this is the plot point, it would be silly, but they handled it with way more care than like, I mean, probably could have like, I think there probably could have been a better impetus for the breakup. But if that's what you're going with, they handled it about as good as possible.
You mentioned Chris Evans. So I had him in both work and didn't work. Mm. I thought I thought his performance was good. Yeah. I thought he was very likable. But I'm sorry, I just don't buy that man as a struggling actor at Bernie Bro in New York. Yeah. The whole time, every time they would show him, whether it was in the Goofy play or, being a cater waiter, living in his crappy apartment, he just doesn't read as an underdog to me. I mean, he's Captain America. Yeah. It's just a tough sell. I don't know. I also, by the way, there's no way that woman drinks Coke and beer. No way. No way. Sorry. Just wanted to get that out there.
Too much calories in the Coke and the beer. That's it.
Let's talk about okay, so that was the stuff we liked.
Yes, yeah.
Let's talk about kind of where it shifted and where it kind of lost us. There's two things. There's the sexual assault plot line as the catalyst for her self-realization, and then there's kind of the ending, which is her epiphany, self-realization. So the assault, there's a woman who is her favorite client, Sophie L. I do like they call him like Crispy, Mark P, like it's like The Bachelor.
Kind of reminded me of Severance a little bit, oddly enough.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like they're not really people.
Yeah,
they're just products. They're cogs. Did you recognize Sophie L, the actress, right away? Or
no, it took me a second to realize that she is of Succession fame.
Harry from Succession. He hasn't been in a lot of stuff.
Right.
I didn't realize it because she was like smiling and happy for most of the movie before
has a heart
and happens. She's like a big smile, big toothy smile. And then but there was a moment where Carrie like did this audition where you remember where she auditions to be a newscaster for the network.
Oh, you're right, yes.
Goofy smile, and that kind of clicked for me. I was like, oh, I've seen this goofy smile somewhere. So the movie starts with her, she sets her up with some guy who says she's old because she's on like 39,
Yeah.
and there's another guy who says he's tired of dating women in their 20s, and then makes clear he wants to date a woman who's 27 and not
Yes.
24. That's a different guy. Sophie is, just like a very nice, normal, professional woman. And the first morning that first night she spends at Pedro Pascal's apartment, interesting decision not to show any of like the love scene at all, by the way.
Yeah.
It's all like romantic comedy tropes. She wakes up, tangled sheets, beautiful breakfast. She calls this dude, Mark P, who says, yeah, it was a great date. I guess we'll see each other again. Doesn't hear from Sophie. Later finds out Sophie reported or is threatening to sue the company for assault. She confronts her on the street, which is an insane thing to do. And Sophie's very upset with her. Then at the end, after she breaks up with Pedro Pascal and goes with Chris Evans' character to upstate, and they crash a wedding and they get a fight, she gets a call from Sophie, who doesn't know anyone else really, who is like, this dude's outside my door, and it's like a really scary scene, and she rushes home to be with her. Okay. This, to me, I didn't like it either, because I felt like it was just there as a vehicle to make Dakota Johnson want to be a better person.
Yes. I think you have to use, like, it's a sexual assault. You have to use it with care, right? And you have to, if you're going to do something like that in a plot, you have to have some sort of actual meaning for why it's there. And as a B plot, to make another character have some sort of like awakening, which kind of doesn't really awaken in the way that kind of like, it just is. It's kind of a like harmful thing to do. I think like there just wasn't a point to it.
She returns as a client too.
Yeah, right.
At the end, you catch that, which I was like, whoa,
yeah. She did.
Really,
and she met a nice guy and all that. Yeah, like like, I don't know.
It's like a weird, convenient resolution to what. I mean, I did think it was interesting, like the way, the matchmaking service was like, this happens sometimes, and like, whoa, upsetting, and it didn't really work for me as the catalyst for what was ultimately her decision, which is my biggest problem with this movie. I just did not find it believable that a woman who was so concerned about financial stability and so blunt about that concern and so open about it comes to the realization that love matters more than anything, and she'll just make it work. And her partner, who was on the other side of this, also comes to the realization that he just loves her, even though they've gotten all these horrible fights and whatnot. It just didn't feel consistent with the character established in the first half of the movie.
They also, I didn't feel like anybody liked each other. I didn't feel like they actually like there was no moment, like, so we're thinking about past lives, right? You spend the first 30 minutes with them on Skype together. You feel the connection, like you feel an actual chemistry. And when they finally meet, there is an actual magnetism between the two, right? For this one, I understood, we talked about Dakota Johnson, like the coldness at the beginning, but she kind of stayed the same throughout the movie. And there was no chemistry with, like, I don't even know if it's chemistry between her and Chris Evans as much as the characters. They didn't have anything to work with that made me feel like they had this spark that was coming back. I didn't feel like they liked each other when they were dating. I didn't feel like they liked each other by the end of the movie. I just did not. I was kind of like ambivalent to them getting back together. I didn't feel anything about it.
Generally, like, you don't need a movie where this woman ends up exactly the same as she was at the beginning. I'm empathetic to the idea that she wanted to portray somebody like kind of coming to some realizations about herself, which is, what these movies are about. We'll talk about past lives, but like, the movie is supposed to be about this, like a woman who is coming to terms with something about herself. Yeah. And in this case, it is an obsession with material things and money. And I think it would have been believable for her to make like, hey, realizations, maybe perhaps a realization that this is not the most important thing to her. It doesn't need to be sort of foregrounded in everything she does. I think she probably should have just ended up alone, and I think that would have been enough and more believable.
And she also did not really grow because she got a promotion right before he like.
Well, but she might not take it.
I don't know. It just
gonna quit the job.
Yeah, it didn't. It did from the breakup to the like. There were just too many things that the movie just did not earn here, and I just didn't think we earned the relationship at the end.
I also just, I don't think they had great chemistry, her
They
and
never.
Chris Evans. I wasn't, because I think if you really wanted to sell the idea of a woman really putting aside her concerns, you would have to have like really great chemistry to where
Yeah,
you believe it. Like, she just wants to be with this guy. And, I did like how she, by the way, didn't make him blameless in like,
yeah,
when they have the fight about the parking, he's being a jerk.
yeah.
He's clearly being stubborn about wanting nicer things for himself. And she hints towards that in their final conversation on the stoop. But it just, I don't know. So my next question was kind of like, what does this movie have to say? What do we think the
Well,
thesis
can we
was?
talk about the elephant in the room here? Can we talk about the elephant in the room here?
What?
Is that Dakota Johnson?
Oh, well,
Tough,
but you said it.
tough hang in the movie. This movie, she wasn't good. I like she was hard to watch. This movie reminds me of. Did you ever see Iron Fist on Netflix?
No.
Okay, so Iron Fist was in the Marvel, TV show universe with like Daredevil and all of them, and there was like a guy who was like supposed to be like who they were going to cast as Iron Fist, and they just didn't, and they casted the worst possible dude to be Iron Fist, and the show around him was good. He was just so bad at this main character that it was hard to watch. And I do feel like Dakota Johnson put up like bad numbers. It was a bad showing for
Well,
her. She was
would
hard
you
to.
feel the same way if they cut the movie off halfway through?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I
Really?
think. Oh, well, if they cut the movie at
I know it wouldn't be a normal movie,
right,
but
yeah,
if you
if
cut
it
it
was just
like,
like
let's
yeah,
say the part where you got taken out by the part where they go in the
yeah.
apartment. If it stopped right before then, she has the conversation with Pedro Pascal in the restaurant about
Yeah,
value.
if she
How would you feel?
if it is a stoic, like, cynical woman who is playing this role of somebody who doesn't believe in love and doesn't believe in marriage and all that stuff, I'm with it. I'm with it. But there was
Yeah,
no turn. Like she is with Chris
right.
Evans and she is acting exactly the same as she
Yeah,
is when like there was no like there was
yeah,
one dimension to her character, one note, and she was not able to like make it anything else. And so it became a tough hang. It became hard to watch. Like the monologue at the end when they're watching this wedding, and she's like, they're just gonna. I mean, that's not all her. That was like the script, but also they're gonna get like it droned on about how miserable marriage is and all that stuff. And I was like,
yeah,
I don't want to hang out with the main character of a movie, and I think that is ultimately harms a movie when you do not
yeah.
when the main character is the toughest hang in the whole thing and nobody around them is kind of lifting it up and the acting like she just kind of was not kind of
For me, it was very much a tale of two movies because I think her persona, which is very cold and
yeah
flat, it really worked in the first half of the movie
yes
because it was so baked into it. And I thought like when her and Pedro Pascal were going back and forth
mm,
about, being very blunt with each other, I liked it just because it was so interesting. And then in the second, and I liked the dialogue was really clipped in kind of a
yeah
surprising way. I don't know. But then in the second half, it didn't work for me. And some of that I think it would be very hard to execute with anyone, honestly,
yeah
just contrast. But yeah, I think that her style, which is very specific,
hmm
just couldn't sell
yeah
that sort of transformation that was already hard to sell.
yep
Yeah, so it's funny. Have you watched her in anything else?
have I seen 50 Shades of Grey? No.
She also
I
was
missed
in a
that.
romantic comedy called How to Be Single that I
Mm.
watched on the airplane.
I didn't make
Um,
it all the way through Madam Web. I think that's the Spider-Man movie that she was in. So
that's a tough one. Yeah. Yeah, she's I think she is maybe more of a specific actress
hmm
than like there's women who can kind of be in anything, and I don't think that is
Yeah, like
her.
past lives. It also hurts by a past lives watch where you
We'll
have
talk,
such a
yeah,
dynamic actress there,
and the performance is
and the
amazing,
performance is
I think.
incredible. Yes.
But it's funny because that there's some similarities in that like the woman there is like cold in a
Yeah. Yeah.
way, but it works
Yes.
in
But
some of that is
she's
the plot
warm.
though.
She's warm when she's just
Yeah,
in the presence of the person she's supposed to be warm with. Like
right.
you feel
Yeah.
it even in her like stoicism. Like there is a depth to that acting that is present there that Dakota just ain't got it. Sorry.
No, I think it's fair. The movie's thesis we talked about a lot. It's about the commodification of love. It's about millennials, I think,
Mhm.
having to run into both their own finances, but also the fact that, we live in like an app driven dating culture where
Mhm.
there's always the next, people can check these boxes, even though most people don't hire luxury matchmaker services. Most people every day who are single are doing this
Yeah.
on their apps, right? They're saying not this height, not this money,
Mhm.
whatever. I wanted to read this quote from an interview with Celine Song about the movie. The first part is not a quote. It's from an interview with Time magazine. Classic British romances, in which the marriage contract is paramount to the plot, served as reference points for Materialists. Pride and Prejudice's Darcy, Song points out, is a dreamboat because he's not only the love of Elizabeth Bennet's life, but also solves her family's financial woes. At the time, the practicality of all was not on my mind. She's talking about when she was young. We were struggling writers. Her husband is a screenwriter too. He wrote
Okay,
Challengers.
cool.
We were struggling writers happy to eat from the law cart. Being a woman that age, you still think you can meet the love of your life on the street. By your 30s, it's clear how much money everyone is making. You need certain things. There's a hardening that happens, she says, offering her grand theory of dating. If you ask your friends who are single now what they're looking for, they might start with height. It sounds cynical, but I think there's a lot of truth to what she's saying. I also think what she did was she took subtext and made it text.
Mm-hmm.
She's talking about Pride and Prejudice. It's implied that Mr. Darcy will change her life.
Yeah.
This movie, nothing is implied.
Mm.
Again, I thought that was interesting, but the reason Pride and Prejudice works, I've seen every version of it, is the heat and the romance between the two. And so it's like, does the movie work if you have the idea but no warmth? Not so sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, in my dating life, especially in the recent dating life, finances were important. Like finances were an important thing. And those conversations, I think, happen a lot sooner for a lot of people than we're trained to do. And I think that's one of the reasons that the actual naming of numbers and money and all that stuff was really, I thought, like an interesting and I think realistic move that they made. And it was refreshing. Like, we don't actually know how much people make, but in this movie, like, we know, and in conversations, and it is, I mean, the marriage contract, as they discuss, is a contract. It's a business contract in a lot of ways. And I liked that part of the movie. I like when they were fighting at the beginning. I thought this was the whole thing the movie was about
Yeah,
money and
money
dating.
and relationships. Yeah. It is something we don't really see a lot.
Yeah,
It's certainly not in romantic comedies, but in romances generally. And I like her point in that quote about how, when you're 20s, it's like nobody cares.
Yeah.
And then most people don't care. And then the older you get, the more it matters.
To paint a picture of a woman who is upfront about, I want to date a rich dude, and making it, at no point did I feel like we're falling into this like gold digger trope or she's a shallow person. It was just like, this is really important to me as much as all this other stuff. And I think that's something that you really have to handle with care to do that.
Do you think it would have been a little bit more believable if the guy wasn't like broke? Like if
Right.
he was just like, kind of like middle class. I don't know. Maybe it would have been less. I mean, he didn't even have like his partner was disgusting.
It was,
I don't know. Like, I don't know.
And also kind of like, you gotta, at some point, because here's the thing, like, being broke is one thing, but he's in the same position he was in when they dated years ago. There's a bigger question than money about that. Like, there's motivation. It's what are your prospects? Like, what are you doing? Like, there's more bigger questions that I think, instead of your net worth, that that I think a person like her probably could have and should have asked.
He gestures towards it at the end when he's like, yeah, I need to book commercials. I should just suck it up. And I actually wish they had explored this a little bit more, because she comes across as just, it really feels like she only broke up with him because of money. And I wish they had clarified a little bit that it wasn't just money, because money, while it can be very materialist and shallow, it can also be representative of, effort.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the dude's lack of effort probably,
I mean,
and that's a real thing in relationships. And a lot of people, I've known people who have broken up with someone not because they were broke, but because they felt they weren't trying. That's probably the most common reason
and
why.
In the date, he wasn't trying. Like, he was not.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying. It was their anniversary. They wanted to do a thing, and he was resistant to that moment. Like, I mean, if you ran into an ex that you dated for 5 years, y'all hadn't been dating for years, and you see them again, and they are in the exact same position as they were when you break up, that is a no. That's it. There's no way you're going back to that. Nobody goes back
Yeah.
to that situation, especially somebody when you're talking about money and all this stuff and what it represents. And this dude is in the exact same apartment, exact same job, doing absolutely nothing that he was, regardless of even if you said he was a middle class person or whatever. Like, you have not improved your life in any meaningful way in years since we broke up. That's it. We got nothing to talk about.
Yeah, not to be like too revealing of myself, and it's been a long time since I was single, but I always, and I was in my 20s back then, but like for me, I remember it was never about how much money men made. It was whether I felt like they were trying really hard to do something, to be passionate about something. And also, and you could say, well, yeah, he's trying, he's in plays and whatnot, but like, is he? We don't know that just because he's in a play.
It seems like he was in the same place he was in when they were dating. Like, he hasn't elevated his life in any way.
Next thing I want to ask you before we get to kind of generally romantic comedies, the last thing before we grade it is, are we surprised this came from Celine Song? So we're now building the kind of Celine Song oeuvre or whatever, which is very small. So for those who don't know, Celine Song she's a playwright. She's from South Korea. She grew up in Canada. She immigrated to Canada, grew up there. And then her debut, she's not old, and her debut film, Past Lives, it's her first movie. Written, directed, came out in 2023. It was critically acclaimed, was nominated for both Best Picture and Best Screenplay. The Times had it as one of their 100 best films of the 2020s. It is also about a quote-unquote love triangle, although she said these movies aren't about love triangles, they're about women, which I think is very telling about how she views the men in these movies. It stars Greta Lee, who's unbelievably good in it, as a woman who's it's very autobiographical. She's also from Korea. She immigrates to America. She has a childhood love who resurfaces much later in her life. At this point, she is married to a white man. And the movie is, there's some flashbacks to that, but it's also, it's mostly told in the present. And it's over the course of a few days of her reuniting with this man from her youth and feeling a very strong emotional connection to him. And then ultimately saying goodbye to him, and her husband being there and kind of processing that as well. There's some through lines for sure.
Yes.
You've talked about some of them. I mean, now having seen these two movies together, do you feel like they inform each other at all, or?
Yeah. So to me, one thing I thought that was we see in the both of these are movies about women. These are the women dictate the action in both of these movies. The men are just kind of sitting around waiting for them to decide. They're at the mercy of the women in both of these movies. Whoever she picks in Past Lives or Materialists, that's who's going to go with her. It's all about her decision, and the men are sort of outgrowths of her internal issues, internal conflicts, I guess. And so, but overall, when you watch Past Lives, you watch this. This is like her commercial album, right? Materialists is like you got your underground hit, right? And you got you won your best new artist, Grammy or whatever. And then now you're like, I want Diplo and Timbaland, and I want Justin Timberlake to sing the hook, and I want a Lil Wayne feature, and it's messy and it's mainstream, and it's not going to have the same impact. And we see it all the time with directors, especially when they have something like a Past Lives and they go into this sort of mainstream-ish, even though it's still an A24, but you have these stars in here and all this stuff. And it's messy, and it's not the same. You may have a top 40 hit. You may have songs that we play in the club, but we all know that the Past Lives with no features is the one that's the actual classic.
Materialist was a hit. I don't know a hit, but it's done well. It made over $50 million in the box office on a much $20 million budget. So that's a success. Yeah, I think that's definitely more than fair. I think you're right about the women. I think they follow, in some ways, there's similar arcs in that they're movies about women who have to kind of let go of something to move on with their lives. Past Lives, it's really not a love story at all.
Right.
It's about a woman mourning the loss that she experienced when she emigrated. And it's something that she hasn't really, I think, reckoned with.
Right.
And it was very resonant for me because my mom has some similar elements in her own life story coming from Korea. This movie, again, is about a different kind of moving on and loss, but it just doesn't play as well. Like a woman moving on from being materialistic.
Yes.
It just doesn't carry the same resonance, and it's not as believable, ultimately. I think it would have been more believable if it didn't end with a conventional rom-com love ending.
Yes.
Maybe there was a better way to land the plane. And then, the performances in Past Lives, the big three, are
not
just
even close.
They're better in the roles. They're better mostly with each other.
Yeah.
I remember I was looking back at kind of some of the scenes from Past Lives, just clips, and I forgot how much I liked the white husband in it too.
Yeah.
It's a really generous. It's a really generous role. Like it's a role that could have been thankless, and he's like this bystander, and he's very funny about it, but he's like sweet, and they love each other, and they get their own love story, and Greta Lee is just amazing in it. I mean,
she's great in pretty much everything, but this is she's really
good. She's so subtle. It's such a subtle performance. So yeah, I guess we can end here before we move on to the romantic comedies talk. But I don't think it was like a huge step back for Celine Song, because I still think she did interesting things with this movie, and I was not conventional, and I was like not bored the entire time because I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen, which is and we're going to talk about some really bad romantic comedies, but it's obviously not as good as Past Lives, which is a very hard thing to replicate. I am going to give it a B.
Okay.
Which maybe is generous. I just think I actually, for me, especially looking at some of these other romantic comedies, I know this isn't a romantic comedy, but I'm like, good God, there's so many bad ones. Yeah. At least this was interesting and deviated from the formula and made me think. So a B for me for Materialists. David?
All right, we're going to go B minus. We're going to go B minus, which, I think one of the things it suffers from is that those first 30 minutes were so good, and I was so interested and was really interested in where it's going, and it just didn't hold up to that. Pascal, Chris Evans, great. We're docking points for the QB is the most important position on the field. You can have the best defense in the world. QB can't get you over the hump. Sorry, Jacksonville Jaguars. It's just what it is. It's just tough.
She's a divisive actress, I think, to say the least. I think Celine Song's next project is on esports, so it should be completely different. Okay. I think I saw that somewhere, and she's very interested in video game culture, so that it could be pretty cool. So we're going to do our Mount Rushmores, but before we get to those, don't laugh. I want to talk to you about I know we just spent like 45 minutes explaining why this isn't a romantic comedy.
Yes.
But the reason I want to talk about the state of romantic comedies now is because I think the marketing of this movie made people really excited.
Yeah.
Because there are so few theatrical releases of romantic comedies. I should have said at the beginning, this movie is available on streaming. That's why we're talking about it. But if you're listening to it, I hope you've seen it. Or if you listen to this podcast this far. There just have been very few romantic comedies, big budget releases. There's a lot of streaming ones of very, very divergent quality.
Right, yes.
Like I wrote down a list of some of them, and there were some decent ones, a lot of streaming ones. Just Crazy Rich Asians was a while ago. That was a big theatrical release, huge success. Marry Me with J-Lo, Ticket to Paradise, George Clooney and Julia Roberts. That was horrible, by the way. Horrible. Tough. Great example of how.
Watch on the airplane. Watch on the airplane. It was
so bad. I'm like the world's biggest George Clooney fan. I think he's good in just about everything. I don't know how you can take a movie with George Clooney, and it really shows you how much writing matters in romantic comedies, maybe more than acting.
I watched George Clooney play basketball once in Jackson. Long story short.
How'd it go?
he was pretty good. He played basketball a little bit at in ER. He'd have his backwards cap. He stayed by where my dad was. He was filming Brother, Where Art Thou? Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? And I was like, that's George Clooney. My dad was like, it's not George Clooney. Get out. He left. Didn't say anything to him. And it was young in his prime George Clooney right there in Jackson, Mississippi.
That's incredible. He would be like number one on my list of actors I'd like to see just walking around. Yeah. Did you see the clip of Hunter Biden talking about the difference between crack and cocaine in like incredible detail? So I'm watching him and I'm like, it's honestly riveting. And then he's like, yeah, and like, George Clooney, F that guy. He's not even a good actor. And I was like, no, too far, Hunter Biden. I'm sorry. Okay. There's like
This is where we draw. This is where we draw the line.
Too far. I just watched Michael Clayton. Okay. Bros. There's some gay romantic comedies. Bros, which is okay. Red, White, and Royal Blue, Fire Island. There's some for teenagers. To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Kissing Booth, which is horrendous. To All the Boys I Loved Before. The first one was good, but it kind of fell off. You're Cordially Invited, Palm Springs. That was kind of fun. The Fall Guy, if we're gonna call that a romantic comedy, is okay. Good. That one is carried by the actors, I would argue.
Yes.
The two leads, Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. Rye Lane, which is a streaming one that I recommended to you that nobody has seen, but is like one of the best romantic comedies of the last 20 years. So go watch that. Anyone But You, which is one of the worst romantic comedies in the last 20 years. Featuring Sydney Sweeney's Good Genes. Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is another gay one. The Idea of You was the Anne Hathaway one based on the fan fiction written by a One Direction fan.
Okay.
It's actually not bad. Not bad. But there's not a lot of like a cinema. Like when we make our lists, in 20 years, I don't know how many of these will crack. And I think that's kind of the point I want to say is like there's some good ones. Set It Up was one I really liked on Netflix a few years ago. Featuring a girl playing a sports writer as the lead. But I don't know. It's not a golden age by any means.
Yeah. So one of the things that like when I think about the romantic comedy, sometimes I look at actors and actresses. I'm like, we have such, I think, a golden era of actors and actresses who could be in great romantic comedies. Right. When I saw Us, I was like, where's the Lupita rom-com? Like Lupita should be in a rom-com immediately. Like when I'm watching Chris Evans here, I'm like, Chris Evans should definitely be in
not as a struggling actor.
Not as a struggling actor, but like, Pedro, like they were great. There are so many people when I watch them, I'm like, they should just be in really good rom-coms. Like if we were in the 90s, you got to think that as a change of pace, like The Rock would be in a rom-com. You know what I'm saying? Like we would just have these rom-coms just random.
Good on that, but
right. But we would just have these like people who were stars who would just have rom-coms and they would make a ton of money. Like J-Lo just made rom-coms all the time, partially just because she was a huge star. And some of them were good. Like Will Smith did Hitch. You know what I'm saying? Like there's just like so many, we just have so many stars I feel like are just missing this era of rom-com. Like Tom Cruise did rom-coms and stuff. We're just missing it.
Do you think it's the stars or the writing though? Because like even the ones that we've talked about that had good like Ryan Gosling's a huge, that one's pretty good. But the Clooney one, this movie, like,
I mean, as part of, I think, so here's the other question. Here's number 2. Here's the question.
Okay.
Do you think that rom-coms are built more for shows than movies? And I think, because part of me, when I'm going through this list, I'm wondering if like Insecure broke rom-coms, like if we're just like thinking about the way that you can do a rom-com and the way that you can draw out the characters and will they, won't they, in the era of streaming where you could make so much money, having a bingeable rom, because there's probably nothing more bingeable to me than like a rom-com show, right? And to have it go from HBO Max to Netflix to whatever, 13 episodes, low budget, social media takes it over, and you're just because like Think Like a Man, for whatever it was a monster hit of a movie. But the shows, when I think of rom-coms, I think of these TV shows.
Is it better suited to the show formula?
Yeah, I think.
Two of my favorite TV shows that nobody's watched of all time are HBO rom-coms that are TV shows. One is Love Life Season 2, which you and I watched.
Classic season of TV.
Truly one of the most underrated seasons of television of all time. Please go check it out.
Yes.
I hope it's available.
No, they took it down. I think that it was one of when HBO and Mac, they were purging everything. They took that down. That was one of the big controversies. But I think they're having a season 3. They're making a season 3 that is coming to one of the stream things. So hopefully it comes back. But I know at some point it was taken down. I'm not sure if it's still down or not.
It's so good. And it truly takes the whole season, to your point, for him and Jessica Williams, like the rom-com to play out. Another one is called Starstruck. You should watch this. Okay. It's so good. It's 3 seasons. But the first season in particular is like a very conventional rom-com. It's about a woman, Rose Matafeo, is this like, I think she's from New Zealand, comedian, who is like a very normal kind of like train wrecky type woman. She ends up having like a Notting Hill relationship with a very handsome, I forget that he's a young Indian American guy. I forget or he's British, sorry, not American. So it's basically like Notting Hill, but if the main person character was like a goofy woman. It's so good. It's so funny. But yeah, I think it's a point, like if you're a writer, it's like, do you want to make a movie that like, or do you want the series?
Yeah,
And maybe some of these writers are being drawn to writing series.
I think that may be part, because like when you think about Past Lives, the husband, like that trope of a character is usually not drawn out. It's not somebody you get to know, but in a series you get to know everybody. And I just think that it just lends I think that the rom-com, I think one of the unfortunate side effects of the rom-com streaming is that we don't have as many good movies because there's so much more in the streaming for it.
Also, like I was naming like the creme de la creme of movies. There are some stinkers that I have watched on streaming. Like I cannot stress to you how bad. I'm not going to name. Oh my god!
Hey, you haven't watched. You didn't name any Tyler Perry movies on there, so there's you haven't been where I've been when it comes to these rom-coms.
You put this note about the lack of black rom-coms over the last few years.
There's been a lot of sort of consternation about the fact that there's not a lot of black rom-coms, not a lot of black love story. That's been increasing as of late, but they're, like I said, Think Like a Man.
Very 90s.
Yeah, it's very 90s, like all of that, the Gabrielle Union era, Morris Chestnut. Yeah. It was like a black rom-com was like it felt like every month. It may have been the same 6 actors, but it was just, we had a new rom-com all the time. And Think Like a Man comes out, it does well, and then there's just no follow-up. Think Like a Man 2 comes out, but there's like not this like follow. You feel like you have this ensemble cast, and there should be more of these movies. They proved to do well. Girls Trip did really well. The Packer movies all seem to do well, but they're just missing the rom-com aspect of it. And there's been a lot of discussion.
Rom-com? I think of Girls Trip as being like The Hangover.
Yeah, it's more like a Hangover type of thing. But like the Will Packer movies in general just do well. I was when I saw Girls Trip, I was in the movie theater with there was a church.
Definitely a see in the theater movie.
There was a church group that was there, and there were these 2 ladies in front of me with big old church hats. And when what's the guy, the sexy man, like walks on the scene, they're like, they were like holding each other. They were like, oh Lord.
That was one of my favorite. Like that, you love a movie that like gets a true reaction out of the theater crowd. It's too rare these days. Before we move on to our Mount Rushmores, did you like how Insecure ended? We've never talked about this. Is this too long of a conversation to have in 30 seconds?
Yeah, I liked it. I liked how Insecure ended. I thought it was like, I mean, there's nothing like the first season of Insecure. Is one of the great seasons of television to be around on social media.
The dude who cut hair on Insecure, the super light-skinned guy with light eyes.
Yeah.
I forget the actor's name. He's in a streaming rom-com that is not good that I watched on Amazon because I was like, oh, I like him. He plays a single dad, I believe.
Okay.
Or no, he has a child. He meets a woman who's maybe Zoe Deitch. I don't know. Anyways, it's not good. It's called, I'm pretty sure it was sponsored by Tiffany's because the entire plot hinges on the purchase of a Tiffany's ring. Okay. Anyways, that's, like I said, I'm not going to name names of the bad ones, but I've watched many very bad ones on the streaming services. We're going to end by naming some good ones. I would like to preface this segment by saying that after I wrote my 4, because I created this document, I wrote, we're about to have a Two Americas moment. So I just want to say,
I
knew it was coming.
I knew it was coming too, because I was like, I was talking to my fiance. I was like, so me and Mina are going to have we're going to make these lists. And I was like, we're about to have our first Two Americas moment. And this is about to be it because I don't think our list is going to have any overlap whatsoever. So
I know. What if I joked to you afterwards, I should have thrown out Love and Basketball just to and the allegations.
I would have thrown out the hot take that it's not good. But anyway.
That's crazy. That's such a crazy take. We can't end that note. Okay. I will go first. Here is my Mount Rushmore of rom-coms. Number 1. This is not in any particular order. My favorite movie of all time, Groundhog Day. I
saw that. Did not think of it as a rom-com until I saw it on the list. That's a good pull. That's a good pull.
It is a rom-com. Yes. But you don't think of it as being a rom-com. Yeah. It is 100% a rom-com.
Yeah, A+ choice. I
actually 3 of like one of my other favorite movies of all time is Edge of Tomorrow, which is like a Groundhog Day premise.
Yes.
You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
The Tom Cruise movie, and then Palm Springs is also a Groundhog Day premise. So
and the show I mentioned that's on Netflix. I didn't where every day is Thursday. I forgot what it's called. Russian Doll. As a
yeah.
good rom-com of a Groundhog Day theme, again, that is like lent itself to, it's like Groundhog Day was on Netflix, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Okay, Groundhog Day. Clueless.
Mm-hmm.
Formative
Mm-hmm.
for people my age.
Yes.
I opened Instagram the other day and somebody did a breakdown, or it was like the first thing that came out was like a breakdown of Dion and Murray was her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Their sexual relationship in Clueless. I was like, we don't need social media. This is too much.
It's a shame that Stacey Dash never went on to do anything else after Clueless, and that was the end of her career. Went out on a high note.
Okay, number 3. You've Got Mail.
Okay.
It's kind of like the, though I wonder if it would hold up. I haven't watched it in a while.
That's the one with Dave Chappelle, right?
Yeah.
Yes. It counts. It counts. We're counted as
You've Got Mail is like similar to Materialists about, it's funny because that's a woman. It's a woman who ends up marrying a very rich guy, right?
Yeah.
Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, but he's her adversary, which is the far more common rom-com trope, but whatever. It's comfort food for me. Number 4 is a movie that was very big for me in high school, Amelie. Have you ever seen Amelie?
Yes, I saw it at a rooftop thing in Minneapolis very randomly. Yeah,
it's very twee and high school Mina thought this was the peak of cinema.
Right.
Maybe I got to rethink some of these picks. All right, you get to go.
All right. Okay. So we're going to start with the one that I'm sure that we've all seen here is Jerry Maguire. I love Jerry Maguire. It's one of my favorite movies. I love Tom Cruise and Jerry Maguire.
I've seen 2 of the other 3 movies.
I love Jerry Maguire. I know you've seen, and also
okay, I don't want to spoil your list.
Jerry Maguire is great. And we found common ground here because
Jerry Maguire about a man taking advantage of his subordinate. She's dependent on him for her income.
Forget about all that. Forget about that.
Kidding.
Rod Tidwell. But the question is Jerry Maguire? I was actually torn between 2 problematic movies, which is Jerry Maguire and Hitch, because Hitch is also aged poorly, but it was at one time a perfect date movie.
Hitch is also just so rewatchable.
It's
Hitch
such a rewatchable movie.
I'm sitting down.
You're just sitting right. You're going to watch Hitch. Jerry Maguire also may not have been a good agent. Rod Tidwell, 1,500 yards and like 80 receptions. Why is he even on the field? Sit out and don't take the field.
And Cuba Gooding Jr. did nothing after that.
He disappeared. He came back as OJ, and then that was it. I never seen him in between afterwards. Jerry Maguire. All right. After that, Boomerang. Boomerang, all-time classic.
Classic. Yeah.
Eddie Murphy, all the women that have ever, like one of the most beautiful casts we've ever seen. Halle Berry, Rashawn, all those people. Eartha Kitt was in it. It's just an endlessly watchable movie.
Legitimately funny too. A lot of the rom-coms don't actually have the com part.
Yes. It was really, absolute classic. Everybody looks amazing in it. Best Man is also on there.
The first one,
not the second one, where nobody notices that their best friend is dying, and I don't understand how we got to that point. Best Man, just an incredible movie. Again, a very rewatchable movie. Cast, it's like the who's who. It's like the Breakfast Club, basically, for the '90s rom-com black folks. And then I put this in order because you put your last one in order. My absolute favorite rom-com, one of my favorite movies of all time, where I went on my very first date to see when I was like 16 or 17. Brown Sugar, an absolute underrated classic movie. My favorite rom-com. Me and Your Eyes Are Darting.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I admitted this to you. Okay, what year did this come out?
2003.
Okay, yeah, it's not a good excuse for me not having seen it. Okay.
It's so good. It's Taye Diggs, Sanaa Lathan, but who steals the show. The B story plot is like an attraction between Mos Def and Queen Latifah. Come on, everybody. Come on.
Did you see speaking of rom-coms, did you ever see the movie where Queen Latifah plays a basketball trainer who falls?
With Common?
Just right.
Just right.
I feel like that movie should be studied for negative chemistry.
Yes.
Like
it was this is the opposite of that. Mos Def and Queen Latifah jump off the screen, and Sanaa Lathan, so Taye Diggs is basically a writer for like Double XL. And Sanaa Lathan's a writer for like Double XL. Taye Diggs like a record exec, and it's just like the life I wanted as a kid to be doing this sort of stuff. Mos Def is incredible. Kanye West, who never went on to do anything else after this, does this like some of the music for the soundtrack. There's the two Dalmatians, Ren and Ten, the rappers. It's just an absolute Mina. That's your homework.
I'm
you gotta
looking.
watch
I'll watch this. Definitely, Nick would watch this.
I wrote like 2,000 words about it for his 20th anniversary because it just meant that much to me.
Taye Diggs, his filmography is very rom-com heavy.
2 Taye Diggs movies are on my Mount Rushmore, which is like.
He also was in Set It Up, by the way, which you should watch. The one I was mentioned on Netflix.
Okay.
Like 6 years ago. There's 2 relationships. There's Glenn Powell and Zoe Deitch, and then there's Taye Diggs and Lucy Liu, who are their bosses, who they're trying to set up. He's really funny in it.
He also follows everybody on Twitter.
That's the other thing he's known for, is following everybody on Twitter. Your list is great. My list is great. If we combine them, we can get 42 states out of 50.
There we go. There we go. This is
a coalition.
We have a perfect movie. This is the future the Democrats want.
That has been Materialists. So, as always, I like to tell you guys what we're doing next so that you can watch along. We are back to TV. We're Perfect Match. I've been asked about that. So, it actually comes out today. You're watching this. Sorry. We will be recapping it next week. And then the following week, we'll also be talking about Perfect Match as well as some reality business.
Yes.
And then in the future, I know we have plans to talk about aliens. We're really all over the place on this show. We go, what other pod goes from Superman to Materialist to Perfect Match to aliens? Of course, we'll be all over the Love Island reunion as well. But the next thing is Perfect Match, which comes out on Netflix, which is, for those who don't know, they're kind of like Pro Bowl of reality stars. But this year they have people from Love Island.
Yes, Love Island. They have all kind of folks on there. Yeah, it is. It's like the Avengers Endgame of Netflix reality shows.
That's a more generous analogy than the Pro Bowl. All right. Well, this has been Viewer Discretion. Thank you, as always, to Charlie Kravitz and Brian Madison for producing. And I'll see you guys next week.